Hi, good morning to everybody. I have gone through the syllabus fairly carefully, and in light of the present emergencies, I've simplified this particular course for the rest of the term. So let me go through this with you, and then if you have any questions, the first thing to do is to send me either an email or use the contact information that I have provided you with in a separate email so that we can be in contact with each other. As I indicated to you in my email this morning, I have revised the office hours so that it now falls on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday between 9 and if I'm not mistaken, 11:15. I have created a doodle poll and given you the URL on an email and allocated essentially half-hour slots, for people to get in touch with me in the event that you have any questions. Let us remain fairly organized, and so book yourselves in the time slot that you want, and I will stay on point here in my study to receive calls and field queries concerning both your textual reading as well as any other kind of information that you might want to have with a view to performing as I expect you to do, quite well for the rest of the course. I wish circumstances were different, and I fully realize that this is going to be a fairly skeletal offering for the next few weeks. But I would rather you be safe and sound and healthy and survive this particular viral pandemic than to lose you as fairly cherished would-be historians and scholars in the field. So with that said, let me go through the schedule, or rather schedule of works for the rest of the term. I have kicked forward your midterm, which was, as you know, planned to be submitted today or tomorrow or some such. And instead, I'm giving us time, both at your end and at mine, to submit the midterm on the 26th of March, which will be an individual submission. And by all means, go ahead and submit that, to Turnitin.com. And if you go to Turnitin.com using the same ID and the password for this particular class, you will see when the deadline is in terms of an exact time slot. Please note that the group submission that we were scheduled to do after the individual midterm is eliminated. The question that you will be addressing for the midterm is, and I quote, using Stohler, Wolfe, Cooper, and Dhada's Red Book, chapters 1 and 2, discuss the limits of archival endeavor in the history of African decolonization. If I were you, I would first and foremost thoroughly read Stohler, Wolfe, Cooper, and Dhada's Red Book chapters 1 and 2, and they are very largely to do with research methodologies. And having done that, then address the issue of what do these authors discuss concerning limits of archival endeavor. For instance, how does Stohler see colonial archives? And look at also at Wolfe and Cooper, and then Dhada's last, the two chapters, 1 and 2. The key performance indicators that I will be using to evaluate your midterm would be then to show me whether you have read these works carefully, to identify uh, uh, the degree to which you have actually systematically absorbed the materials and the content, and then I would be looking at how you are manipulating that culture of evidence to argue the case about the limits of endeavor in the colonial archives, with African historiography. So that's for the 26th of March. Thereafter, I have just reduced everything, and pared it down, because I fully realize that many of you will be facing challenges, in the gig economy, as I probably feel you are in the midst of, in terms of work, in terms of possibilities of being asked not to come in. Some of you are in the service industry, so with all of that, with all of that in mind, what I have done is I've basically put together a small pared down package. So on the 2nd of April, for instance, you will be reviewing, or rather viewing, Mortu Nega. And on that same very week, on the 6th of April, you will then upload that, to Turnitin.com as a film review. On the 7th of April, which is, one day after your submission, you are asked to read at least 2 texts. One is The Liberation War in Guinea-Bissau Reconsidered, which appeared in the Journal of Military History in July of 1998. Incidentally, I have provided a copy of that in the library reserves, and you should ideally be able to, find it very easily. And if you cannot find it and somebody else is using it, then here is what I would suggest you do. You just use the JSTOR and use the reference that I have provided, and just download the article per se. The other one is a review of Mortu Nega, Death Denied, which I did some time ago when Flora Gomes had finished the film Mortu Nega. And the reason I'm asking you to read that is just to give you a sense of, how I, for instance, have approached that film review. And to a very large extent, that's essentially to give you, I am hoping that will actually act as an inspirational muse for you to improve on your film reviews. Now, please note something. I think we have addressed this before, and I want you to bear in mind. Do not upload your film reviews without uploading with it your self evaluation of the rubric that I provided you. When we were meeting each other in class sessions, and I distributed that as a PDF. If you don't have that at hand, I would suggest that you get in touch with your colleagues and ask them to send you the rubric. Of course, I am not encouraging you to connect with your fellow colleagues personally, because you really want to maintain a sense of social, self-imposed social distancing. As you know, this is exceedingly serious, and we really do want to ensure that you are safe and well and thriving, and we have great hopes for you to survive this particular pandemic, so that you are with us, and so that we have an opportunity to continue shaping and mentoring and holding you as a fairly dear student of ours, as young scholars moving forward. In many respects, I'm also suggesting that it is in our interest to ensure that you survive and prosper, because a loss of a young soul in in a formative stage as a historian in training is indeed a very sad loss to the profession per se. Having said that, then I would suggest that on 9th of April you are going to view You Have Struck a Rock. Again, the film is very accessible, and once you have viewed that film, you should submit it to Turnitin.com again with the rubric, with the self-defining rubric. On that same very week of April 9th, you are going to read the Portuguese Massacre of Wiriyamu in Colonial Mozambique, the Mozambique, the Red Book, and in particular chapter 10. And with it, I think you should also read the new oral historiography book of chapters 1 and 2. Let me suggest here something. You should first read the Red Book on chapter 10, which reconstructs rather the grim massacre per se, and then go to chapters 1 and 2, of the oral historiography book. Those two are fairly well paired. One provides the outlook, the summation of what transpired, or the anatomy of the massacre. And the chapters 1 and 2 basically essentializes the massacre and provides the eyewitness accounts, on how the massacre occurred from the point of view of both survivors and perpetrators. We then, on the latter part of April, shift gear completely, and we. Up to this point, it has been fundamentally a male-driven narrative, and including in my own work, and which I think you all know, I'm trying to mitigate that by providing some evidence, on women, colonial violence, and colonial resistance. The chapters 3 and 4 of the new book on oral history will give you a sense of how the role of women is A, marginalized, and B, not taken with the seriousness that it justly deserves, particularly in the struggle for decolonizing Africa, specifically armed struggle and political resistance. You Have Struck Rock, which you would have seen on the 9th, is exactly addresses that issue and the role of women in South Africa during apartheid. When you finish on the 21st, 2 days later, you are going to be watching a movie called Flame. Pay particular attention to the way in which even during the liberation struggle, which ostensibly seeks to liberate women as partners in the struggle to free and decolonize Africa from European imperialism, that the social conditioning that women, even in the armed struggle, undergo creates effectively a subalternized narrative in which women are, to a very large extent, chattelized. And Flame is a wonderful movie that exposes effectively the toxic socialization of women as instruments for enabling masculine toxicity in the liberation struggle. The film is focusing on Zimbabwe and the Zimbabwean liberation struggle, which was, as you know, very close to Mozambique, and it was in fact the Mozambican liberation struggle during its last period of decolonization that enabled Zimbabwe to begin accelerating its own march to freedom. And so, it's actually a very controversial film when it came out, and it raised quite a few taboos which were never addressed, by the current literature in the field. On the 28th of April, then, we become almost, concerned with text. And you are focusing then on chapters 5 and 6 of the new book on oral historiography of Wiriyamu. And in many respects, those particular two chapters, you want to read that carefully with paying a particular attention on what are the ways of knowing and what are the ways of digging evidence in colonial historiography. And that chapter 5 and 6, I think, gives you effectively an anatomy, of that method. Now, for those of you who have volunteered to look at the third book called The Voice Digger, it will be very useful for you to use that material for the 28th of April reading. In fact, what I will do is, after this particular presentation, I am going to send you all the PDF which I have already sent to the others, so that you can have and use that information that I have provided. However unfinished that material is, to help you understand ways of knowing and ways of digging evidence in colonial historiography. On the 29th of April, you then submit the film review before midnight on Flame, which is about the role of women, as you know, in the Zimbabwean Liberation Front. And then on the 30th, which is the day after, you are then going to be reading chapter 7 of the Wiriyamu Massacre and oral historiography. And the title for that particular reading is Ways of Protecting Evidence in Colonial Historiography. So you want to, then ensure that you have familiarized very thoroughly with the oral historiography book. And by that time, I think on the 30th of April, it will be our last session, I'm afraid, because from the 30th to the 19th of May, you are spending most of your time in reading and thoroughly reading Wiriyamu, the book on oral historiography, revising Spivak's Can the Subaltern Speak? And using Stohler, using Stohler, Wolfe, and Cooper to address the following final examination, and it's only one question. So you can see I've pared it down, but it's a substantive question, for you to address. And the question is, to what extent is the author of Wiriyamu on oral history successful in addressing Spivak's contention that the subaltern cannot speak in or outside the colonial archives? Addressing this final question, therefore, you will be therefore discussing systematically, and the stress is on the systematically, the contents of the second book before addressing the question. In short, if you really have just skimmed the book and want to get away with it, then I think this is probably going to be where your flaws of not having systematically read the text, will just quite simply, rise to the surface. And so you really want to do that, a fairly careful reading. In short, what I have done here is pared it all down, eliminated group work, left the films where they are, gave you an ample opportunity to prepare for the midterm, which is next week. And then I'm giving you effectively 19 days or so between the 30th of April to the 19th of May, which is the last day on which you can turn it in your final paper. And it's only one question, so midterm is one question and the final is one question too. So that's really where the cookie is crumbling, I'm afraid. So in a sense, it is important that in order for you to perform here, please understand that you really make sure that you are not stressed out, make sure really that you have maintain good food habits of food consumption, make sure really that you have a safe place to stay and be with, and because if your immune system is compromised, your classes and your performance is also compromised. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I will load this up on the Blackboard, and I will also put this up, on YouTube if I can figure this out very quickly. And if not, then I will just put it on, on some kind of a common drive, iCloud, and they'll give you, a link so that you can download and start reading this. The new schedule I am posting both on Blackboard. I'm going to send this to you as an email so that you can be you can start working on your pared down schedule of works for the rest of the term. If you have any questions, by all means, you know what to do. Namely, you can Skype with me, you can telephone me, or you can send me an email. The chances of me responding with an email are much swifter, but if you have booked yourself on Doodle Poll, then I think, I will be at your beck and call. Now remember, sometimes there are students who are ahead of you in the queue, and they will be occupying that half an hour or so. So if I don't respond, that's largely the reason why. Okay? Well, be safe and be well, and let me know how I can be of help to you, and good luck. And know that we really do care about your performance, and and how you are going to tackle this particular challenge moving forward. Yeah. Bye.